So here we're talking about the final stage of recording your vocal. Sure, you may have used a rough vocal when you're coming up with all the instrumentation for the track, but now we have all that. Let's say your track is like 70 to 80% finalized. It's time to get the final vocal take done. Now, it's really helpful to have the majority of the instrumentation in there and mixed enough that it has some decent energy, as it's harder for the singer to become inspired and feed off the music if it's lacking in certain areas or has little energy. So before we get recording our vocal, let's just talk about the most important link in the chain, the singer and the performance. Now this may sound obvious, but you really want to get the best possible performance. Yes, we can tighten up certain aspects later on, add thickness and pick out all the best bits and paste them together. But we can't affect the fundamental sound, at least only in minor ways. So if the singer is a bit weak or they're just having a bad day, it will always sound a bit weak no matter how many plugins and mixing techniques you throw at it. So it's important to get a good performance. If you see that after a few takes it's not quite working, then get the vocalist to tighten up the vocal performance then and there by singing it differently. As in, get the performer to change the way they sing, to snazz it up, to make it sound snappier, add extra emphasis to certain words, try to sing it deeper, whatever you think will help get the right performance. Now, just so you know how important the initial performance is, let's just jump forward briefly and look at what you can realistically expect to get from processing and tuning the vocal. And that is to sort of gain a level. And what I mean by that is an initially poor performance can be raised with mixing and processing techniques to become an okay performance. And an okay performance could be raised to be a good performance, and a good performance could be raised to be a great performance, and so on. But you're not going to be able to take a poor performance and turn it into a great performance. This is of course presuming that you want a natural sounding vocal. There are ways of covering up a not so great vocal performance, like using more extreme auto-tune settings, heavier distortion and layering with synths and so on, which we will be looking at in detail later in this tutorial. But using these techniques in the extremes will always sound somewhat artificial. So if you want a natural sounding vocal, then you need to get a good initial performance. Of course, you may want that process sound, and that's fine. You'll have a little more room for error in the performance, but you still want to get as good a recording as possible. So let's jump into our DAW of choice and get recording. Now, pretty much all DAWs these days have lanes or playlists, which allow you to record multiple takes onto one audio channel. If your DAW does not have this function or you're not sure how to use it, don't worry, just use separate mono audio tracks for each recording. There are a couple of advantages to using lanes over separate audio tracks, one of which is I can just set the loop region. Let's just pretend this is the first verse, and when I hit record, it'll just keep recording over and over again, adding a new lane for each repeat. So I can just quickly, record one verse at a time until I get that nailed. The other benefit of using lanes is that comping the takes together is just a bit quicker. So looping, of course, is if you want to record a small section of the vocal at a time, but if you want to walk a more traditional path and record the whole song in one go, then you still want to use lanes. Each time you start recording, another lane will automatically be added, and you can keep doing as many takes as you need, and you still get the benefit of being able to comp them together quicker. Just a quick note for you Cubase users out there who are new to lanes, just make sure that when you get up here, you've got the keep history selected, not replace, otherwise it will just replace the recording rather than actually keep each different version of the loop. Again, if your DAW does not work in the same way, then you might want to stick to just using separate mono audio tracks for now. All the editing techniques I'm going to show will still follow the same rules, so there is nothing to lose from not using lanes, just a little extra time when it comes to comping, but I'll show you how to get around that as well. So I'm going to use lanes, and personally for my own vocals I find I get better results when I focus on recording just one or two sections at a time rather than going through from start to finish, but you must always do what suits your singer best. And just a couple of things to keep in mind while you're recording is, as a general rule of thumb, try and get like 3 to 5 main takes if needed. Less is always better, as it means less time editing later on. If you have more than 5, then it can be a real ball ache to comp together a vocal that sounds good, and is also really time consuming as well. What will help is if you record a bad take, just get rid of it then and there and carry on recording, so you're not left with too many takes to sort through at the end. But if this is not an option, as in you're recording yourself like loops like I'm going to do, so you can't delete takes on the fly, and you find that you need to record loads of takes to get the content that you need to get a decent performance, then try to listen to them at the end and ditch the not so great takes to leave you hopefully only 3 to 5 to comp from. So I'll just show you a couple of takes of me recording my singing, and then I'll skip the video on, but I'll keep recording until I'm satisfied that I have enough material to comp together one good take. I wait for you, yeah. I wait on every word you say. I wait for the clouds to clear. One day I will tell you what you mean to me. One day I will hold you in total ecstasy. I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting for you. I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting for you. I wait on every word you say. Okay, so we got our 3 recordings. So if I click the lanes button and bring that down, there you go. You got our lane 1, 2, and 3. And whichever comp I choose will appear in the main audio track. Okay, so let's just go through and listen to them quickly just to make sure they're acceptable. And what I'm looking for here is not absolute perfection. I'm not looking for absolute pitch perfect notes because I can tweak that later on. And I just want to make sure that in the 3 takes that I've got there, that there's enough material to just to be able to comp together like one decent take out of it. But I'm looking for the way it's performed, the emotion behind it. I wait on every word you say. I waiting for you. Okay, so there was some okay bits in there. There's a couple of bits where it was not very nice at all. It's a very out of key bits, but not too bad. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So let's move on to the next one. I wait on everyone for you. Again, it wasn't quite as good as take 1, but it had some bits in there which are okay. I wait on you. Okay, that's cool. I have 3 reasonable takes of the first verse and the chorus, and now I want to go on to record the second verse and the intro to the breakdown. I'm sure you have heard of a technique for fattening up vocals called doubling. There is a whole video dedicated to this later on in the tutorial. So what I'll do is I'll also record a couple of extra takes of the second verse so I can use the extra takes to double up some of the words for extra emphasis later on. While I'm at it, I'll also record some extra takes of the chorus that I will again use for doubling the vocal to make it fatter and pop more in the chorus. Note that the takes used for doubling want to basically be carbon copies of the original takes, so don't try anything too fancy with the takes you're planning on using for doubles. The closer they are to the final main take, the cleaner the doubled effect will be. You can always use some of the other takes that did not make the final comped vocal to comp a secondary take for doubling, but again, I'll talk more about this in the doubling and tripling video. So let's record the second verse and the breakdown. Okay, so those are recorded now, and I've just gone through them to check that they are, okay, and I can comp together a good take for the second verse, plus another couple just for the doubling of the vocals later on. So now we have the foundation of the vocals, and we can basically start getting some harmonies down and some extra bits. So this is a good time as you and the singer can relax a bit as the main vocal recording work is done. And it's a good time to do some ad-lib tracks where you can just go through and add extra bits. Just basically be completely free to try anything you like. Hit record, let the song flow and see what comes out. So do not underestimate ad-libbing. You can get some of the best parts of a song from just letting someone freestyle it and come up with new material on the fly. It can be a really creative time and can literally make you change the way your song is created. If you suddenly get a new, even better hook line, or the hook line is sung in a different way that no one had thought of, or you may just get extra content you can use to keep the song interesting and fluid in the later parts of the track. I wouldn't rely solely on freestyling for a track's vocals. In my opinion, it's much better to have a game plan and then get extra content on top later on, if at all possible. Just remember that it's not always the case that you do get good stuff from the ad-lib tracks, but it is definitely worth trying each time. So just get a couple of takes and see what comes out. A really good tip to get useful and usable content on the ad-lib tracks is to ask the singer to freestyle with just the hook line in mind. So instead of getting like 3 minutes of completely random yeahs and ohs, at least it's focused and therefore can be more useful than complete randomness. Though complete randomness sometimes has its moments too. Also, keep in mind that professional singers will most likely not have any problem freestyling stuff, but when you ask some amateur singers to just let go and see what comes out, they can sometimes freak out a little bit and panic. Just tell them it really does not matter if it's all complete garbage. It doesn't matter if it's 3 minutes of out-of-key trash. If you get like 10 seconds of a new vocal that really works, then it can be worth it. Especially in dance music, even little chops of ad-libbed vocals can be gold. So I'm going to go ahead and record all of the other takes that I need. I'm going to get some harmonies. I'm going to try freestyling it a bit to try and get some fresh content, which may or may not work. And I'll see you in the next video when we're going to start looking at comping the vocals.